She said it was just an inspection, I repeated, staring at the crushed fence that used to stand straight just an hour ago. The white SUV was still half stuck in it, engine ticking softly like it knew what it had done. Karen stood there, arms crossed, sunglasses reflecting my porch. "You built this fence without HOA approval," she said. Her voice was calm, but sharp, the kind that cuts through your patience, so I had to check if it was secure. I looked down at the splintered wood and the tire marks dug into my soil. "You call this checking?" I asked. She didn't even blink. "Don't raise your tone, sir. I have authority here." That made me laugh quietly, because the truth was there was no HOA here. This land was mine, fully deeded. I'd bought it after 20 years of working construction jobs, saving every dime after my wife passed. There was no committee, no board, no one except me. But Karen, the woman who lived across the road in her spotless house with a dozen community rules signs, had made herself the self-appointed enforcer of everything she saw. "I'm calling the cops," she said, pulling out her phone. "You damaged my property." "My property?" I stepped closer. "Lady, your car is in my fence." She smirked, typing fast. "We'll see who owns what." Something about her confidence felt off, like she knew something I didn't, but I stayed quiet, because what she didn't know, what no one around here knew, was that I wasn't just a farmer. I'd spent 10 years in the Army Corps of Engineers. I knew how to build, fix, and record everything. Cameras, backup drives, timestamps, all running. So when the blue light started flashing down the road, I didn't panic. I just leaned against my sugarcane loader, wiped the sweat from my neck, and whispered, "Let's see how deep this goes." She rammed into my fence for an inspection, but she didn't. Expect the farmer she messed with used to move tanks for a living. The 2 officers stepped out of their cruiser, hands resting on their belts. Karen rushed toward them like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life.
"That's him!"
she shouted. "He threatened me and destroyed HOA property." One of the cops frowned. "Ma'am, calm down. Tell us what happened." She waved her hand toward my yard. "He built that illegal fence and blocked the community's shared access road. When I tried to inspect it, he attacked me." I crossed my arms, trying not to laugh. "You mean when you drove your SUV straight through my fence?" Karen glared at me, her lips pressed tight. "He's lying. Look at his attitude. People like him think they can do whatever they want." "People like me?" I asked, my voice low. The taller officer looked between us. "Sir, do you have proof this is your land?" That was my moment. I pulled a folder from my truck, deed papers, county stamps, everything in order. I handed it to him, then pointed to the corner of the porch. "And there's the camera. It's been recording since morning." Karen froze for just a second, just long enough. The officer flipped through the documents, his brows lifting. "This address. There's no HOA registered here." Karen's face went pale. "That can't be right. I'm the head of our neighborhood association." He looked up slowly. "Ma'am, according to the county, this property isn't part of any association." The silence that followed was beautiful. You could almost hear her heartbeat cracking, that fake confidence she always carried. But she wasn't done yet. Karen never stopped when she lost ground. She just found new lies to stand on. She turned to the officers again. "He's dangerous. He threatened to lift my car with that machine." I tilted my head toward the loader behind me, its engine still warm. "I didn't threaten," I said. "I warned you to move your car before I start work again." The shorter cop tried not to smile. "Sir, please don't touch the vehicle yet." I nodded. "I won't, not unless she keeps calling it hers." Karen pointed at me, shaking. "You'll regret this. I have friends at the county office. I can make your life miserable." That's when I knew she wasn't just some nosy neighbor. She was playing a bigger game. And if she really had friends in the county, then this was about to get ugly. She called the cops on me for damaging her car after she drove it through my fence. I handed the officer the camera remote and he pressed play. The small screen showed the road, my gate, and then Karen's SUV coming into view. Not slow, but steady, like someone testing a speed bump. She swung wide, aimed straight for the fence, and you could see her foot push the gas for a half-second before the crunch. Then she climbed out, looked at the camera for a beat, and started yelling, exactly like she was acting surprised. The footage kept going. After she walked around to the front, she bent down and slipped something by the post, like she wanted a reason to call it damage. The taller officer froze. "Pause it." He zoomed in on the object. It was a laminated tag, printed text, cheap lamination. not an official county tag. He picked it up where she'd dropped it and read aloud. Community maintenance notice. The print looked homemade. The shorter cop's jaw tightened. That's not a county tag. Karen's face changed while we watched. She tried to smile at the officers, but it didn't reach her eyes. I was simply inspecting, she mouthed when the officer looked up. Her phone started ringing. She answered it fast, voice sharp. They're here, she hissed into it, then turned to the cops and said, You see? My board will back me up. You can't ignore community rules. The taller cop stepped closer to me and lowered his voice. Sir, is there more footage? Anyone else? I pointed to the driveway camera. Yes, the other angle shows her leaving her house 5 minutes before, talking to someone in a dark hoodie by her mailbox. The guy waved and walked away. The officer rewound. Sure enough, a second car cruised slowly past and a shadowy figure snapped pictures from across the street. The frame caught the license plate for half a second. Karen's eyes darted. She swallowed hard and tried another move. You'll ruin my reputation, she cried. The shorter officer set the tag down and looked straight at her. Ma'am, you staged this. That's fraud. We'll need statements. Her confident act started to crack like old paint. I felt my chest get tight, not because I was scared, but because this was bigger than one broken fence. Someone had been planning this. Someone had been watching. I rubbed my palms on my jeans and looked at my loader, then back at Karen. Who's that other car? I asked quietly. The officer clicked his radio, and at that exact second, Karen's friend on the other end of her call shouted something I couldn't hear. She dropped the phone like it burned her hand. She rammed my fence, planted a fake notice, and had a mystery car filming. This wasn't an inspection, it was a setup. The officers took Karen aside for questioning while I stood near the loader, pretending to check the hydraulics. But my eyes were on her phone, lying face down in the dirt where she'd dropped it. The screen lit up again, buzzing nonstop. A name flashed for half a second. Greg, County Zoning. The same friends at the county office she bragged about. I nudged the phone with my boot, just enough for the officers to notice. The taller one picked it up with his glove, frowning. Ma'am, who's Greg? He asked. Karen crossed her arms. That's none of your business. He's part of the county property review team. He knows about this whole situation. The shorter cop exchanged a look with his partner. Ma'am, this area hasn't had a county review in over a year. You want to explain that? Her face went pale again. I just meant he helps me with community issues. I almost felt sorry for her almost. But then I remembered how she'd stood there earlier, smiling while I stared at my broken fence. That fake grin replayed in my head like a bad commercial. The officers stepped aside to talk, radios crackling. I could hear bits of their words. Possible fraud. Impersonation. County contact check. Karen kept pacing, muttering under her breath. I stayed quiet, watching her crumble. Then out of nowhere, a dark pickup rolled up the street, same one from the footage. It stopped right by her car. A man climbed out, tall, wearing county maintenance gear. His badge looked real enough to fool anyone not paying attention. Everything okay here, Karen? He called out. The officers turned instantly. Sir, identify yourself, one said. He hesitated, then smiled. Greg Jensen, County Zoning Department. I'm just here to confirm the inspection she requested. The taller cop's jaw tightened. Sir, you got ID? Greg reached into his pocket, pulled out a card, and held it out. The badge logo was off, the font wrong, seal tilted. I'd seen real ones before when I filed my land paperwork. This one looked printed. I stepped closer. That's funny, I said quietly. Because I know the real county seal doesn't bleed at the edge. Greg's eyes flicked to me, then to Karen. She was trembling now, whispering, Just go, Greg. But it was too late. The cops had already called it in. Sir, don't move, one of them ordered, hand on his holster. Karen's voice broke. This isn't what it looks like. I smiled for the first time that day. No, I said. It's exactly what it looks like. Her fake county inspector showed up in a stolen uniform, and that's when the cops realized this HOA inspection was a scam. Greg's fake calm cracked the moment the officer asked him to step behind the car. He stammered something about official duties and property dispute protocol, but his voice shook too much for it to sound real. The shorter officer took his fake badge, looked at it under the flashlight, and said quietly, Yeah, this is printed from a home template. You really thought we wouldn't notice? Karen tried to walk away, pretending to be on another phone call, but the taller cop stopped her. "Ma'am, you're staying right here." Her tone flipped again, sweet, panicked, pleading. "You don't understand. He told me this land wasn't registered right. I thought I was helping." I stepped forward, my patience finally gone. "Helping? You drove your SUV through my fence, trespassed, called fake cops, and dragged this clown into it. That's not helping, that's harassment." She turned on me, shaking. "You're a liar. You don't even belong here. This land used to be part of the community." "Used to be," I said. "Until your developer sold it to me. I got the original deed right here." Greg suddenly snapped. "She didn't know anything. This was my call." His voice echoed down the road. He looked ready to bolt, but both officers closed in fast. The taller one read his name again from the fake badge, called dispatch, and within seconds the truth spilled out. Greg wasn't a county worker. He was a maintenance contractor Karen had met at a local zoning office. They'd both been trying to push a property code violation scam, shaking down homeowners for inspection fees. Karen dropped to her knees, whispering, "I just wanted to make the neighborhood better." I crouched down, met her eyes, and said quietly, "You wanted control? That's not the same thing." The cops led Greg to the cruiser first, hands cuffed behind him. Karen kept rambling, promising to fix everything, but no one was listening. The streetlights flickered against her pale face, and for the first time she looked small, like the authority had finally drained out of her. One officer turned to me. "We'll tow her car and take her in for questioning. You'll need to come by tomorrow for a statement." I nodded, finally letting out the breath I'd been holding since morning. "Yeah, I'll be there." As they loaded Greg into the back seat, Karen suddenly shouted, "You think you've won? You don't know who you're dealing with." I glanced at my loader, the big sugarcane machine sitting quietly by the crushed fence, and said, "Yeah, I think I do." Her fake HOA crumbled the moment her inspector got cuffed, but she still had one last trick left up her sleeve. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. Even while the cops were taking Greg away, she kept pacing, muttering like she was planning her next move. I thought it was over for the night, until a small white car rolled up, its headlights off. It stopped just past the cruiser, and a woman stepped out, holding a clipboard. "County Legal Department," she announced, flashing a badge. "This area is under review. We've received complaints about unregistered structures." The officers looked at each other, confused. "Ma'am, we just verified. This property's private land." "No HOA jurisdiction," one said. But the woman was smooth. "Then you won't mind if I double-check the zoning files," she replied, walking straight toward my porch like she owned it. Karen's eyes lit up, like a drowning person spotting a rope. "See? I told you the county would back me up." I took one look at the woman's badge and my stomach twisted. It was the same cheap material as Greg's. I could almost see the same misaligned seal. My cameras had caught enough fake IDs for me to spot one a mile away. Before I could speak, the woman snapped photos of my property and said, "You'll be receiving a removal notice within 24 hours. Then she turned to Karen, whispering something that made Karen smirk again. I stepped closer. "Hey," I said, calm but firm. "You got a business card?" She stopped mid-step. "Excuse me?" "County employees always carry one." "Go ahead, show me yours." The shorter officer leaned in. "He's right. You got ID besides that badge?" She hesitated. That 1 second of silence said everything. Then she spun on her heel, ran back to her car, and slammed the door. The cruiser lights flashed bright red across her windshield. The taller officer was faster. He blocked her exit with his unit. When they pulled her out, the fake badge hit the ground, clattering like a piece of cheap metal. She wasn't county either. She was part of Greg's scam, trying to intimidate homeowners with fake notices and inspection fines. Karen screamed when she realized it. "You told me this was legal." "You said it was approved." The woman just stared at her. "You wanted power, lady. I just gave you paperwork to feel like you had it." That line hit harder than I expected, because in that moment Karen's entire act collapsed. No HOA, no rules, no authority. Just a woman who needed to be in charge of something, even if it meant destroying someone else's peace. The officers called for backup to process the scene. I leaned against my loader again, this time with a small smile. Karen was still yelling when they cuffed her, but her words didn't matter anymore. The night had flipped. She brought a second fake inspector to finish the job, but all she finished was her own freedom. By the time the second fake inspector was hauled off, The whole neighborhood had gathered. Porch lights flicked on one by one and faces peeked out from behind curtains. For months, Karen had ruled this street like a self-made queen, writing fake citations, leaving notes yelling about grass height and mailbox paint. And now she stood in handcuffs, mascara streaking down her face, shouting that everyone here owed her respect. The officers finally had enough. "Ma'am, that's enough. You're under arrest for property damage, fraud, and impersonation of county authority." She tried to twist free, pointing at me like I'd started a war. "He's lying. He's dangerous. He said he'd crush my car." I smiled faintly, walking toward the broken fence. "You mean this car?" I said, nodding to her SUV still wedged in the wood. "Don't worry, I'll move it." Gently, the officers exchanged looks. "Sir," one started, but I raised my hands. "Relax, I'll just lift it off the fence so you can tow it without damage." They agreed, stepping back as I climbed into the sugarcane loader. The engine roared to life, deep and powerful. The crowd gasped as the metal arms slid under the SUV. I lifted it, slowly, carefully, until it hung 3 feet off the ground. Karen went dead silent. I looked down at her and said, "You came here for an inspection. Consider it complete." The crowd laughed, phones flashing as everyone filmed. Even one of the officers cracked a grin. "You got that on video?" Someone shouted from across the street. I lowered the car gently onto the side of the road. No scratches, no dents, just humiliation. Karen's face burned red, her voice gone. "You can tow it now," I told the cops. One of them chuckled. "You sure you don't work for us, sir?" I shook my head. "No, sir. Just a farmer who believes in boundaries." They nodded and began clearing the scene. The neighbors clapped softly, first a few, then everyone. For the first time, no one looked scared of her. They looked free. Karen turned to me one last time as they pushed her into the cruiser. "You think this is over?" she hissed. I leaned close to the open window. "For you? It just started." She rammed through my fence for an inspection, so I lifted her SUV with my sugarcane loader and let the whole neighborhood see who the real problem was. The next morning, the street was quiet for the first time in years. No HOA flyers on doors. No fake notices in mailboxes. Just birds, sunlight, and the sound of the wind running through what was left of my fence. I leaned against the loader, sipping my coffee, half expecting to see Karen stomping across the road like always. But she was gone. The local news van showed up before noon. Someone had posted the video. Me lifting her SUV, her screaming about authority, and the cops cuffing the fake inspectors. By breakfast, it had gone viral. The anchor called it the Sugarcane Loader Showdown. Reporters wanted interviews, but I wasn't after fame. I just wanted peace on my own land. One of the officers stopped by later to return my papers. "County's investigating her whole operation," he said. Turns out she and Greg had filed over 30 fake inspection claims in the area. "You probably stopped something big." I nodded slowly. "Guess her authority finally met real law." He smiled. "Yeah. Folks around here owe you one." The neighbors started coming by too, people who'd avoided me before because of the stories she spread. The elderly couple next door brought pie. The young family across the road offered to help rebuild the fence. For the first time, we talked like a real community, without fear, without one person pretending to be in charge. As the sun started to set, I walked back to the loader, the same machine she'd called dangerous. I ran my hand along the metal and smiled. Funny how something meant for farming had become a symbol of standing up for what's yours. Before heading inside, I looked across the road at Karen's empty house. A for sale sign leaned in her yard, crooked and half blown by the wind. Maybe she'd try the same trick somewhere else. But this time there'd be a record, footage, proof, and a whole town ready to warn others. I turned off the porch light, whispered to myself, "Land's more than dirt, it's what you fight to protect," and went in. I didn't lift her SUV for revenge, I lifted it to remind her and everyone watching that freedom means standing your ground.